The morning haze lingered over Arden Bay, hanging low like a whisper, waiting to be spoken. Captain Eliza Munro steadied the helm of her 26-foot cutter, Silent Wind, guiding it slowly toward Pier 7, just before the break of dawn. There were no official emblems on the boat, only her name, faded white letters on the stern. That, too, was intentional. At 42, Eliza had climbed the ranks of the coastal systems, division through relentless discipline and an uncanny ability to stay composed. When things fell apart, today's objective was vital. She was running a stealth trial of the new Aegis autonomous guidance module in live harbor settings, far away from the layers of red tape that always skewed the outcomes. She had filed the clearance hours earlier, tucking it deep within the internal logs, invisible to most, but not to those who knew where to search. This test needed silence. Too many past trials had been derailed by high-ranking eyes hungry for publicity, or officials craving headlines. As Silent Wind coasted into the secured dock zone, Eliza eased off the throttle, letting inertia do the rest. Each motion was deliberate, almost ceremonial. She tied the bowline with practiced speed, checked the bumpers, glanced once more at the nav screen. The data was intact. A soft blue glow confirmed successful transmission. She stood at the edge of the dock, inhaling the sea breeze, watching the first line of light slice through the darkness. Everything had gone exactly as intended. Stillness, order, just as she was. Turning back toward the boat, the sharp sound of boots broke the calm. Two figures stepped out from the watch station, their silhouettes stark against the golden glow. There was something in their stride, a purpose, a posture that said this wasn't just a standard patrol. Have you ever experienced something like this? Let us know in the comments, and where you're watching from. Officer Clay Darnell noticed the cutter first, his breath fogging the rim of his coffee cup. Next to him, Officer Leon Sharp was still fastening his jacket, his hand already tugging at his gloves. Someone got their directions wrong, Sharp muttered, giving the boat a once-over. Too sleek, too quiet, no beacon signal either. They moved forward with the kind of ease that came from endless repetition. No need to check logs. No need to confirm birth records. To them, Pier 7 was their turf, and whoever this woman was, she didn't belong. But what should have been a red flag was how calmly she stood. No panic, no rambling excuses, no sudden movements. She faced them directly, with a stillness that suggested she'd been waiting for them. Initial contact, miss. This pier is off limits, Darnell called out, his voice firm, the kind used to hearing. Instant obedience. You can't dock here without proper credentials. We'll need your ID. Eliza glanced between the two, reading posture, distance, how Sharp's fingers hovered close to his belt. She'd seen soldiers in conflict, zones with more discipline than these officers in their own marina. My clearance was entered into the system at 0400 hours, she said softly, each syllable crisp and calm. Sharp gave a dry chuckle, glancing sideways at his partner with a smirk. System log, huh? Lady, this isn't a tech kiosk at the marina, he said, voice thick with sarcasm. This is Pier 7, military grade restricted. You're not supposed to be here. Darnell stepped in closer, his tone shifting from firm to sharp. Your name. Give it to me now. Don't make me repeat myself. Without flinching, without showing the slightest tension, Eliza reached for the leather pouch resting beside the helm. The moment her fingers moved, Darnell's hand shot to his holster. Don't move, he barked. She stopped. Then, slowly, she lifted the satchel by the strap and opened it. Inside was her government-issued ID, neatly tucked inside a standard-issue wallet. Regulation-clean. She handed it to Darnell with the same grace she might used to offer a cup of coffee in a quiet office. He gave it a single disinterested glance, then tossed it onto the deck like it was garbage. Fake, he declared flatly. You're claiming to be some, what, commander? For a project like Aegis? On this piece of scrap metal? The ID landed face up, morning light catching the embossed seal. Anyone who cared to look would see the micro-etching, the matching. Photo, the formatting that proved its authenticity. But Darnell and Sharp weren't looking. They already knew what they wanted to believe. Step back. Hands behind you. Darnell ordered Dot when Eliza didn't respond instantly. He raised his voice. Now! The shout startled a gull, its wings slapping against the still morning air as it burst from a piling nearby. Eliza obeyed. No protest. No. Panic. No anger. She turned slowly, placed her wrists behind her, her face unreadable. She didn't argue, didn't beg, didn't invoke her rank. She simply stood there, silent. The zip ties went on tight, too tight. Sharp boarded Silent Wind. Like a man entering his own garage, looking for something to claim. Let's see what secrets our little captain's been hiding, he muttered, already pulling open storage compartments. And just like that, the real trial began. Not of her guidance tech, but of something deeper, a test of power. When no one's supposed to be watching, the degradation was casual. People started to gather. 3 men on paddleboards floated closer, drawn by the shouting. A woman at the fuel station held her phone up, already filming. Someone in a utility vest stood near a mooring post, not helping, but not walking away either. Sharp worked like a vandal. He ripped out thermal blankets, unrolled toolkits, even launched a sealed life raft onto the pier with careless disdain. The meticulous order Eliza had kept was dismantled in minutes, her gear scattered like trash in the aftermath of a storm. You're quiet now, Darnell sneered, crouching beside her, one hand pressed on her shoulder, forcing her cheek into the fiberglass. Where's all that big military talk now? No yelling, no tough guy coming to rescue you. Eliza breathed in and out. Her pulse stayed steady. Her knees burned against the dock, her wrists raw, her back aching. Still, she didn't shift, didn't slouch. She stared at the water, at the post reflected in the ripples, and waited. Then Sharp found it, the embedded Aegis console. What the hell is this? He snapped, ripping the panel wide open. Wires tore loose as Sharp examined the still active interface. The system blinked once, displaying weeks of precise navigation logs before his boot came down with force. The screen fractured with a muted crack. Months of trial data, countless. Hours of calibration, gone in a breath. Eliza didn't flinch. That your control panel? Darnell asked, half laughing, half admiring his partner's thoroughness. Adorable. You really thought you could run secret tech tests on our pier? She still said nothing. Phones in the crowd captured every second. The destruction. The aggression. Her composure. Sharp moved on, opening a dry compartment, finding a sealed case of backup drives. Without a second thought, he hurled it into the bay. It sank on impact. Whoops, he smirked. Darnell reached for her satchel, the same one that had held her identification. He swung it once by the strap, felt its weight, and then launched it into the water. It vanished with a splash. You know, Darnell said, crouching beside her again, his tone smug. We've seen all kinds around here. Brass trying to pull rank. Teens with fake badges. Never someone who strolls in like she owns the harbor. You must be a special kind of fool. The wind picked up, lifting the edge of her jacket before letting it fall. All around them, the crowd stood in frozen silence. No one stepped forward. No one spoke up. Phones kept recording, capturing the wreckage, the restraint, the authority being abused. But the videos couldn't catch was the quality of Eliza's silence. This wasn't the quiet of submission. Not fear. Not shame. This was the stillness of someone who knew exactly what was happening, and exactly why she was letting it happen. Because soon, very soon, they would realize what they had done. Sharp pulled out his radio. Calling for backup. He announced, "Do a secondary sweep. Let's get her off this bucket before she breaks anything else." Darnell nodded. "She can sit there till they show. Give her time to think about her place." As they waited, more onlookers arrived. The woman who had been filming was now live streaming her audience, commenting in real time, asking what was going on. A maintenance worker stopped his rounds to observe. Even employees from the marina offices had come out, drawn by the tension. But still, no one interfered. The uniforms, the authority, the air of official procedure. From a distance, it all looked legitimate. Just another routine arrest on a high-security dock. Eliza remained exactly where they had put her, kneeling, face angled toward the water, hands bound. To the casual eye, she might have looked subdued, but there was something coiled in her posture, not defeat, but readiness, like a spring waiting to release. The radio crackled. Unit 47, requesting backup at Pier 7. Potential security incident. Female subject, non-compliant with detainment procedures. Copy that. Marine Unit 81 en route. ETA 4 minutes. Darnell and Sharp exchanged a look of quiet satisfaction. This was how it always played out. Overpower, restrain, control the narrative. They performed this show with trespassers, protesters, wanderers. The script never changed, but as the sound of engines grew louder across the water, something shifted. The light changed, sharper. Now, the crowd had thickened, and their attention had shifted from curiosity to something else. Phones were up from every direction now, capturing it all in high definition. The surface of Arden Bay parted cleanly as Marine Unit 81 sliced toward Pier 7. No sirens. Just a low, threatening engine growl. 2 men in tactical gear gripped the bow railings, eyes locked on the small cutter moored up ahead. The dispatch had flagged it as a security breach. Unidentified solo female. Non-compliant. Possibly armed. Protocol. Required escalation. The patrol boat docked fast, ropes tossed, boots thudding onto the wooden planks. Guns out before a single question was asked. Hands visible. The lead officer shouted, "Step away from the vessel." "Sir, she's already secured," Darnell explained, trying to sound in control. "She resisted. We had to detain her." But the backup team lead didn't lower his weapon. His eyes swept the scene. The woman on her knees, the gear strewn. Across the pier, the phones recording everything. This was the turning point. The second everything would come into focus. "What's your name?" the backup commander asked, his voice cutting clean through the still air. Eliza spoke softly. So softly it barely rose above the hum of tension, but the power in her voice was unmistakable. "I'm Eliza Monroe," she said evenly. "Captain, Coastal Systems Division." Silence stretched. Wind sliced across the dock. A younger officer from the backup team noticed something on the ground. The ID card, half buried near the hull of Silent Wind. He bent down, picked it up, and went still, his face drained. He handed it to his superior, no word spoken, just a single nod. And with that, everything shifted. Weapons lowered. Tension cracked. The backup commander blinked hard, his jaw tightened. Then he raised his hand in salute. Clean, formal, full of regret. A gasp rippled through the bystanders. The woman near the fuel station lowered her phone, realization dawning. "Did he say captain?" Someone whispered, "She's with the Navy." Another voice murmured. A backup officer stepped beside Eliza, cutting the zip ties with a deliberate stroke. She didn't react as her arms fell free, the red marks around. Her wrists spoke for her, but she made no mention of them. Instead, She stood slowly brushing wood splinters from her coat. Her eyes didn't meet the crowd, didn't scan the officers. She looked out, past the dock, toward the open sea. The man who had saluted her cleared his throat. "Ma'am, but the apology caught. She lifted a hand, not to silence him, but to end the moment. No blame, no anger. Just a signal. Enough. The two original officers stood frozen in place. Darnell's mouth opened, but he had nothing. Sharp shifted backward a step, as though gravity itself had turned against him. Eliza walked to the helm of her cutter, glanced at the shattered console, then turned back toward the patrol team. "Secure the area," she said, calm, measured, clear. "Upload the nav data before it's lost." And just like that, they obeyed. No questions, no hesitation. The same authority they had dismissed minutes earlier now commanded full and instant compliance. The crowd, once laughing, once filming her public degradation, now stepped aside in stunned, almost reverent silence. Eliza asked for nothing. No praise, no platform, no lecture. She simply stood there, visible and undeniable. There had been no violence, no struggle. Just a name. And that name had changed everything. The first video went live by evening. 36 seconds of shaky, unedited footage. A woman kneeling on the dock, wrists bound, silent, as two uniformed officers rummaged through her vessel and tossed her gear into the bay. No narration, no explanation. Just raw contrast. Her restraint against their casual cruelty. It caught fire online. Within hours, it was everywhere. Outrage filled the comments. Viewers called it abuse, overreach, a blatant miscarriage of power. But the clip left questions. Who was she? Why hadn't anyone stepped in? 12 hours later, a second video surfaced. This time, with sound. Same woman, now standing, stoic, as a Marine Patrol unit snapped to attention and saluted her. A voice on camera confirmed her identity. Eliza Monroe, Captain, Coastal Systems Division. The impact was immediate and massive. Newsrooms ran the footage in endless loops. Panelists dissected every second. Commentators asked why no one in the crowd had intervened. Social media lit up. The hashtag Captain Monroe trended worldwide. By the end of the day, every major outlet had picked up the story. But beneath the noise, something more serious had begun. Senator Dana Caldwell, a senior figure on the Naval Oversight Board, stood before the press in a slate blue jacket, holding a printed still of Eliza from a defense summit 2 years earlier. "We cannot ignore what this reveals," she said firmly. "This is not about one officer. This is about what we've allowed to take root." The message was clear. We failed her, and we must not fail again. The Office of Military Accountability received the order before noon. By 2 p.m., Captain Mia Rourke had been appointed to lead the inquiry. Known for her precision and zero tolerance for internal corruption, she arrived at Central Command with a locked case and a blank file marked classified. Arden Incident, initial REVIE, doubly, but the real investigation was just beginning. As Rourke started requesting data, calling in reports, interviewing personnel, a pattern began to take shape. What happened to Eliza wasn't an isolated event. It was one piece of a long-standing, well-documented chain of procedural violations. Not just misconduct, but system. Failure. Rot, hidden behind layers of ignored reports. Eliza had never raised her voice, never demanded justice. She had let others expose themselves completely. And now, the system was finally listening. Captain Rourke spent the first 48 hours alone, pulling unrestricted access logs, dock activity records, arrest reports, and internal complaints spanning 2 years at Arden Bay. Everything she asked for was granted, and more. Inside the archives, dozens of documented grievances filed by young officers and civilians. reports of improper detainment, excessive force, and ignored IDs. Each one signed off. Each one closed under the same initials, marked as low priority. Dismissed. Forgotten. Until now. One name kept surfacing in the oversight chain. Commander Evelyn Rourke. At first, her emails looked harmless, short, coded replies filled with empty bureaucratic phrases. Recommend closure. Insufficient escalation. No action needed. But the pattern became impossible to ignore. Any report involving a detained woman, especially if credentials were presented, landed on Rourke's desk. And from there, they vanished. Captain Rourke made no public statements, no press briefings, but quietly, she began contacting former officers who had left without explanation. Some answered right away. Others took a few days. A few had moved across the country. All of them told the same story. They had reported wrongdoing. They were then pushed aside, isolated, pressured to transfer or resign. Now they wanted to return. 3 days into the investigation, the first leaks appeared. Internal memos, sanitized arrest logs, chain of command summaries with entire pages, blacked out screenshots of denied transfers, complaints buried, silence enforced. And just like that, the conversation changed. This was no longer about one woman on her knees at the edge of a dock. This was about a system that had buried dozens more just like her, counting on nobody noticing. Confronted with evidence, Commander Rourke's polished defense started to collapse. The breaking point came in the form of an email dated 7 months earlier, sent to a deputy enforcer. If she resists, book her. If she doesn't, book her anyway. Keep her quiet that way. The press briefing was short. The agency confirmed major procedural failures and signs of systemic suppression within specific coastal enforcement branches. No names were mentioned. But the message was clear. Investigations were active. Personnel changes coming. Senator Caldwell spoke again. What happened in Arden was never just about one officer's overstep. It's about the habits we allowed to become protocol. We don't just owe Captain Monroe an apology. We owe her reform. Eliza gave no interviews. She was informed, invited, offered platforms. She declined them all. The only public image since the incident was a grainy photo of her walking, alone on a dock at Rockshore Naval Quarters, hair tousled by wind, eyes fixed forward. But the system was no longer quiet, and neither was she. The final test arrived at the peak of the media storm. A federal building, 10 miles inland, was breached. 2 guards down. Hostages confirmed. Unknown assailant. Unclear demands. Arden Harbor went into immediate lockdown. Tactical units scrambled to respond. The very officers who had zip-tied Eliza were benched, under investigation, left standing in shame behind a fueling shed, while others raced toward real danger. But as panic built around the command response, Eliza moved, calm, intentional, unstoppable. She approached the mobile command center. Inside, chaos. Maps scattered. Frequencies crossed. Live feeds flickering. Arguments over who had control of which comes. Someone yelling about drone feeds not syncing. Eliza didn't say a word. She stepped in, grabbed a plate carrier, slipped it on like she'd never taken it off. No one stopped her. No one questioned it. She sat at the console, fingers moving with certainty. The lead operator was mid-transmission with a SWAT captain when Eliza leaned forward and tapped the mute button. He's bluffing, she said softly. Watch his pacing. Every 12 seconds. He's reading. There's a script. The lead operator blinked, still catching his breath from shouting. Who are you? Eliza didn't turn. Run facial recognition through defense archives, she said, steady. He's ex-logistics. Check his left wrist, the scars. They're from military restraint procedures. Start with dishonorable discharges. Fingers tapped keyboards. The camera feed flickered. A name popped onto the screen. Jackson Miller, former private contractor. Known instability. Released under. Conditions. Eliza leaned into the mic, her voice cool and absolute. Jackson Miller, we have you surrounded. No one's been hurt. But that can still change. You still have a choice. Her tone didn't rise, didn't falter. Let them go. You already know how this ends. The only thing left is how it sounds. The mobile unit went quiet. One instructor stood frozen, halfway. Into his tactical vest, 2 senior officers fell silent mid-debate. 2 steps left. Good. Now lower the weapon. Nice and slow. The feed showed Miller shifting. 1 step. Then another. Then the gun dropped. Hard but safe. Move now, Eliza. Said. Within seconds, SWAT stormed in. No shots. No screams. No blood. The hostages emerged. Hands up, safe. The suspect knelt. Surrendered. The entire standoff was over in under 4 minutes. Inside the van, no one said a word. Eliza lifted the headset, placed it carefully on the console, then rose. Her jacket was still stained, dried traces. From that morning at the dock, the same jacket she had worn while guiding the operation. Like it was just another system test. She stepped out into open air. Wind swept across the pier. Word spread. Fast. Nearby units stopped to watch. One soldier saluted instinctively, then lowered his hand, awkward, but sincere. Another followed. From behind the fuel shed, Darnell and Sharp watched silently. No jokes. No smirks. Just the quiet, sinking realization of what they had tried to break. And failed to even dent. Eliza kept walking. She passed the edge of Pier 7, where her satchel had been thrown, into the water and never recovered. She didn't look for it. She didn't need to. In just 1 hour. She had gone from detainee to commander, but she hadn't changed. She had simply revealed what had been there all along. This had always been a test of systems, of structure, of pressure. But this time, the software wasn't what was being tested. It was people, and they had failed until she took command. 3 months later, sunlight bathed the shoreline in golden bands as silent wind drifted calmly past the outer markers. Eliza sat near the stern, quietly coiling a line, her sleeves rolled up, jacket set aside. The marks on her wrists had faded, not erased, but no longer painful. Her 8-year-old niece sat nearby, legs swinging over the water, gripping a small fishing rod. From the bow, her sister hummed a familiar melody, unnamed but perfect. When the line tugged, the little girl squealed with excitement. Eliza moved beside her, slow and sure, guiding. Her hands let it pull. Then ease it back, she said, soft as the sea. Together they reeled it in, a small, silver fish glinting in the sun. Her niece beamed. Eliza removed the hook gently, held the fish up for one last glance, then returned it to the water. Why do you like the boat so much? The girl asked suddenly, eyes full of curiosity. Eliza didn't answer right away. She looked across the sea, at the calm, at the stillness they were allowed to share. Because it's honest, she said at last. It doesn't care who you are, only how you move. The girl nodded. Maybe she didn't fully understand, but she felt it. They stayed on the water until the sun brushed the edge of the world. Eliza adjusted the lines, turned the helm gently, and let silent wind glide back toward home. The hum of the current spoke, louder than any voice. She didn't need applause. She didn't chase headlines. She had already won, not by shouting, but by standing still when it mattered most. In a world that speaks too fast and listens too little, her silence had become the clearest voice in the room. And sometimes that's what victory truly looks like.